Hi, English College. It's a real delight to speak to you today. It's been a long time since I've been there. I actually graduated in 2003, but it's an absolute delight for me to be able to speak to you, even though it's just virtually. So I'd like to share with you my story of my career. That is definitely untraditional, maybe even a little bit controversial. And it's sort of a good example of how sometimes a person's journey isn't entirely linear. To tell you a little bit about myself, my name is Ingmar Gorman. I'm a psychologist, and I have a PhD in clinical psychology. Um, I am Czech American, so I speak both Czech and English clearly, and I'm a citizen of both countries. I graduated from ECP in 2003, so that's 17 years ago. And my real passion at that time was philosophy. And I believe Mr. Hudson is still a teacher at ECP. He was my teacher. Uh, and after I graduated, I went to the University of Chicago in Illinois, in the United States. And that is a good school. It's a good school for philosophy in particular. And I was there for about 9 months. And I actually found myself pretty dissatisfied. You might, you know that in Europe, when a person enters university, they begin to focus quite quickly on a particular topic. So they apply to medicine, or they apply to philosophy, or to other areas. In the United States, when a person goes to college or to university, the first few years are actually dedicated to the classics. So you might be reading Greek literature, you might be learning about history. It's a requirement to have a broad education. Retrospectively, I think that probably was a good thing that I could have definitely benefited from. But as somebody who spent much of their life in Europe, I really wanted to study philosophy and I did not want to do anything else. And that was one of the reasons why I dropped out. So part of my non-traditional path was to actually go to school and then take a leave of absence. I went back to Prague and spent about a year, maybe a little bit over a year, basically spending time with friends, having a little bit of fun as a young adult, and exploring the world. And during that time, I encountered an older person who became my friend and exposed a bunch of literature to me. Literature about a kind of category of drug called psychedelic or psychedelics. And I was raised also partly in the United States, and my brain or head was full of drug war propaganda. So I thought that if a person took a psychedelic, they would legally, clinically go insane um, and would never come back. So I was absolutely terrified. But after reading several books and having a year about thinking about this topic, I realized that there had been a real um, sort of mistake or oversight when it came to the clinical potential for psychedelics to help people with mental illness. And so, what I decided to do was to dedicate my life and career to the study of psychedelics in psychotherapy. So, in 2006, I went to the New College of Florida. That's a small liberal arts college in the United States. Um, to kind of give you a little bit of sense of what a liberal arts college is, it's people are usually not wearing shoes. They might not be wearing a shirt. People can design their own education. They can pursue what interests them. And it's a little bit of a kind of hippie lifestyle, a bit. And I went there because I went to a conference that was dedicated to the topic of psychedelic science. And there I met somebody named Rick Doblin, who um, is a leader in the field. And I said, look, I want to become a psychedelic therapist one day. I want to study these substances. What should I do? And he recommended that I go to this school. And so I eventually graduated from the New College of Florida. I was there for 3 years. I focused almost entirely on psychology, although I did take a few classes in philosophy and Buddhism as well, and biology. And I graduated in 2010, and this is when I took a gap year. I wanted to apply to PhD programs. I know that that was a route that I was going to take. And so I returned to the Czech Republic to work at the Prague Psychiatric Center, PCP as it was formerly known. Um, Today it's known as NUDZ, the Národní ústav duševní zdraví, or the National Institutes of Mental Health of the Czech Republic. And when I was there, I worked in the lab, mostly working with animals. We were actually studying the effects of ketamine, which is a glutamatergic drug that can be a pretty good model for schizophrenia in animals. And so this would involve administering ketamine to rats, spending long hours observing their behavior, encoding it, and then taking blood and brain samples. Wasn't the most fun work in the world, but it was very neat to be involved in basic science research. Not typically what a clinical psychologist would eventually do, but it was a very good learning experience for me. Uh, During that time, I was applying to schools and was accepted to not the new college, that's where I went to college, but the new school of social research. This is a PhD program in clinical psychology in New York City. And this is where I had a wonderful experience getting trained as a therapist and as a clinician. You may not be familiar, or you may be familiar with some of these institutions, but I was able to have a training experience at Bellevue Hospital, which is the United States' oldest public hospital, which is also connected to New York University. I spent a year at Columbia University in their psychoanalytic program. But also, it's a lesser known clinic called South Beach Psychiatric. And this was an outpatient clinic for people with severe mental illness. So bipolar disorder and psychotic disorders in particular. That was really helpful to work with communities that are underserved. I worked on inpatient units as well as outpatient units. So that means that I worked with people who who may not be safe to be out in the public and need to be hospitalized either to the potential risk that they may cause to themselves or to others. This was an incredible experience to be able to help and get to know these people who are suffering pretty deeply. All the while, as all this was going on, I kept a close relationship with Rick Doblin, the man who I met at that psychedelic science conference. And every few months, I would sort of check in, and I developed a relationship with him as well as his organization, MAPS. MAPS stands for the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. That's a nonprofit organization that uses funding or donations to support psychedelic therapy, in particular MDMA assisted psychotherapy. That is, MDMA you may be familiar with as ecstasy or Molly. Typically, those are its sort of club drug forms or terms. People use this drug to feel good, to have energy, to connect with others. And there are neuropharmacological reasons for why this happens. Release of serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, oxytocin. Oxytocin is a bonding hormone. So what that does is it is released during sex, during when a baby is breastfeeding. It is a very strong hormone in in-group and out-group behavior. So when a person takes this drug, they can feel a great sense of closeness with others. So generally, people know this drug because it's used in party settings. But people typically don't know that this drug was originally used before it was made illegal in psychotherapy to help couples and to help people who have a lot of trauma. And so this organization has put millions of dollars into studying whether this drug could be helpful for people who have a disorder called post-traumatic stress disorder. This is, in simple forms, a kind of issue that a person has after they've experienced significant trauma, and it's essentially like they're still haunted. It's some. I like this term. Somebody once said that they're like time travelers, right? So we experience time kind of linearly, but a person who has PTSD, they can be present here in the moment with you, but then a part of them can almost be sort of trapped or go to the past, and they might re-experience things from the past or kind of be haunted by things that happened to them in the past. And so MAPS has been studying whether this drug combined with psychotherapy, it's not the drug alone, it's psychotherapy plus the drug, given 2 or 3 times, not every day, but 2 or 3 times over a person's lifetime, could help uh, cure somebody of PTSD. And so I have been supporting this research as an undergraduate and a graduate, not as a therapist, but as somebody who was coding or studying the psychotherapy through video. I was really interested in what is it about the psychotherapy and the drug and that combination that helps people. So as I was finishing my doctoral degree in 2017, I received a phone call from one of the clinical directors at MAPS. And she asked me if I wanted to be a principal investigator on one of their study trial sites. A principal investigator is somebody who is responsible for leading a research site. So if you're interested in any of the sciences and you want to really pursue that route in academia, regardless of the field, whether it's neuroscience, biology, any type of science where there is research involved, a principal investigator is essentially the lead researcher. And so the study that I was asked to become a lead researcher on was a multi-site clinical trial. That means that this was a study that was happening at many different locations across the United States. So I don't lead the entire trial of 12 or 13 sites. I lead one location in New York City. I was absolutely honored to be given this position, and I actually initially declined because I said I don't think I can. I don't think I might be ready to do it. And they knew me well at this organization. They said, no. We think that you're ready. We really suggest that you take this position, and so I did. And I've been acting in that position actually now for since 2017. So in addition to that, some of my other roles include education about psychedelic integration and psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. So I'm trying to essentially replicate myself. I'm trying to teach others about how this class of drug has been particularly stigmatized, how education in schools and even graduate programs have neglected this category of drugs, and to help people understand what are the potential benefits and what are the harms, because there are some risks that are associated with psychedelics. So I teach. I also maintain a small private practice where I do psychotherapy with people who have some sort of relationship to psychedelics. They might be people who've had an experience in the past, who are trying to kind of heal, or people who've never done a psychedelic but have read a book about it and are interested in having psychedelic experiences. And I help them kind of make educated choices around something that has risk involved with it. So you can see that basically what I've done is made a career out of studying and working with a overlooked compound, that being MDMA. And although I'm not a psychiatrist, I don't prescribe psychedelics. In fact, it's not really legal to do that at this time. It is legal in the context of the research that I do it in. Um, I do what I do is psychotherapy, and I study psychotherapy, and I understand, try to understand how psychotherapy can be helpful for people. And so I've sort of combined something very mainstream and traditional with something very kind of controversial and maybe somewhat underground. We don't know where this is going to land. The initial results of this research is extremely promising, but we cannot make strong claims about it because the research is not complete. And we're currently working with the Food and Drug Administration to see whether this will be a prescribable medicine at some point. And so, and sometimes if I think about my classes at ECP, particularly my philosophy classes and the psychology classes, one of my favorite subjects was human nature. as well as political philosophy. So I was really interested in why people are the way that they are. And although I thought initially I would become a philosopher, I found out that I really was well suited to be a psychologist. And so those lessons in philosophy still stick with me to this day. They certainly impact the way that I see the people that I work with and how I work with them. Um, but it's not something that philosophy was not a place where I kind of landed. So I guess the lesson there is no matter what you think you want to do at your age, if you're really convinced of it, stay open-minded. Um, Another lesson for me was that, you know, sometimes you might, um, it's okay to leave a program. I left the University of Chicago, a great program, and that was not necessarily the end of my career. What was really important was that I found a fit, that I found a place where I could excel and be happy. Um, so I hope that my little story was helpful to you. I really wish that we could have a little bit of a discussion. Unfortunately, that's not going to be possible in this medium, but I find that to always be a really wonderful way to, not for just for you to learn from me, but for me to learn from you. If you'd like to contact me, you can reach me at my email, which is ingmar.gorman@gmail.com. So that's ingmar.gorman@gmail.com. I hope you enjoyed listening to me, and I hope to hear from you. Bye-bye.